your Chargers linebacker, Daiyan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, I'm sorry, because normally I am filled with enthusiasm during our show's opening. A lot of energy, obviously. Not even going to bother pushing the show in terms of telling you all what to do, because in this particular case, there's no need. And Dan Wolkenstein, this is a tough day and a tough pill to swallow for Charger fans everywhere, because Keenan Allen has been traded to the Chicago Bears. Some people deal with heartbreak in many different ways, Dan. In this particular case tonight, before I hand it over to you, I am choosing to deal with heartbreak with some 12-year-old Dalmore. So, if you'll excuse me, please continue.
While Jake pours the brown stuff, I think we're all processing. I know there's a lot of feelings and emotions, and this is a gut punch for everybody. And someone said it earlier about the 7 stages of grief, and you can't overstate how impactful Keenan Allen is to his team. It's just, this fan base has loved him from the jump. And I think a lot of fans were kind of maybe too much convinced that they would not, could not, should not get rid of Keenan Allen. That day has come. In a day in which they find out that we restructured Joey Bosa. They sign a tight end, Hayden Hurst. They bring in Poona Ford for interior defensive line. You think, man, we're out of the woodwork. And then this. It's a live show. You guys know how this goes every time. Comments, topics, thoughts, feelings, curse words. This thing is flooded right now.
By all means, let it out. Dan and I don't have much to say. We're just going to try to navigate this because we're all feeling what you're feeling right now. Dan, no joke, literally. So it was very bad timing between Dan and I's communication when this news broke. So number one, I'm sitting on the couch with my wife watching Thor Ragnarok, believe it or not. And I see the text drop. And I literally had to read it 3 times to make sure I was actually reading this correctly. And of course, I called Dan. And as some previous times when some big news has broke, Dan, for some reason, is not available or not around his phone when everything starts to happen. And I realized that in the last minute or so, I've already called him 3 times and he hasn't answered. And so I just text him, just emergency. It's really just don't know how to process this. Keenan Allen goes down for the Chargers as probably the best wide receiver in team history. It's truly a shame from the standpoint of how close he was to breaking some all-time records if he was to remain on this team. Dan, there were even talks about when trade rumors started floating around. We know when the Chargers were talking about the Big Four, and there were even previous interviews with Keenan Allen saying that, there were some teams that if he was to get traded, hypothetically, that he had a short list of teams that he would want to go to, or he would just flat out retire. It's insane to me that we are not going to have Keenan Allen retire as a Charger. It is truly, truly a dark day to see something like this take place. And that crazy day that we were expecting to open up with free agency, like I told you before on the show, the fickle gods are a fickle bunch, and they just decided to delay the heartbreak for Chargers by about 24 hours on what we were expecting. It was completely the opposite. Everybody would say, it's oh, it looks like Keenan's safe. It looks like, out of the Big Four, obviously he's the one that's going to remain. And then all the events of the last 2 days happen, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, Bosa restructures, Mack restructures, opens up a lot of cap space. Mike Williams, ends up having to be released for cap reasons, but it looks like Keenan's safe. No.
Jake, you and I talked off air, and we probably more me, for being honest. And I even put on Twitter, like, call me jaded when all the Khalil Mack stuff was going down. And I think I braced myself for this. I know I braced myself for this. And I heard rumblings. We've heard rumblings. Jake, you and I have heard things. And some of it you don't want to believe. And some of it you think, came true. And for a player that has already eclipsed 10,000 yards for this Chargers team, perennial Pro Bowler, the heart and soul of this offense through multiple regimes, and probably, aside from Justin Herbert, the most quote-unquote untouchable player on this roster. This is kind of the rip the Band-Aid approach, just a different Band-Aid on a different wound, it felt like. Charlie Sinclair, friend of the show, shout out for the $4.99 donation. Again, if you guys have questions, comments, we're going through as much of these as we can. The ones who give us the donation or props, we'll try to move those to the top. That's how it's always been. We got to be honest, guys. We haven't won with Keenan. Herbert needs Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. Keep Mack Bosa aligns with Harbaugh. Love the show. Shout out, Charlie. Thank you.
Appreciate
Jake,
that.
Dive into this for a second, because there's a lot of layers to this. And if I'm being honest, I don't think Chargers fans, or most of them, aren't ready for this kind of conversation about like the harsh realities of what's at stake right now with this Chargers team. But Charlie's not wrong. He's not wrong here. They have not won with Keenan. Now, it's not Keenan's fault. So, clear. This was a reset, rebuild. They're bringing a new regime. Like, this is kind of happening. And whether Keenan Allen gets traded or cut this year or next year because the contract, you were going to be pissed one way or another. And reports are that Daniel Popper said this from The Athletic. They approached him for a contract renegotiation and or a pay cut. And while Joey Bosa agreed to the restructure, Khalil Mack now reported to agree to the restructure and to the pay cut, which is crazy to me. According to reports, Keenan Allen said no. And while this hurts, between this cut of Keenan Allen, or excuse me, trade of Keenan Allen, the restructuring of those two edge players, they now have $47 million saved of 2024 cap money. Now, the jaded pessimist says, well, who are you going to spend it on? Because the free agent's already over. It's not already over. There's a lot of guys, and there's a lot of holes to fill. That's been a problem on this roster for a long time. So, this is a tough conversation to have. I don't think people are ready for that part yet. I think there's a lot of feelings to be had. So, just wanted to air that out. Jake, we have a couple of these. Try to get to some of these comments here quick, okay? Gary, $5 donation. Thank you. Thank you. The obvious need now is receiver, Jake. I'll let you take this one. But there's nothing to lose.
To lose on. Trade down to
15 plus and get players.
I don't know how much of a slam dunk the trade down possibility is now, given the fact that your wide receiver room is comprised of Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, and Simi Fehoko. I don't think you
on the
can
practice squad, wasn't he?
I don't think you can afford to trade down now with who's going to be on the board. I really don't. Could you conceivably trade down, get some more draft capital, and select a player like Brian Thomas if it's later? Sure, 100% you could. But you're telling me that you no longer have Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, and this is what's left of the wide receiver room for Justin Herbert to throw to? I don't think that you can afford to trade back at 5 now. I really don't. Like,
I'll get to that in a second. Nolan says $5 donation. Thank you, Nolan. Then we'll get to the rest of the comments here. We'll rapid fire for a sec to kind of catch up. So we trade a pillar of this whole organization, keep a guy who can't stay healthy, and show our hand in the draft. Nice. We'll never forget 13. So he's alluding to the fact that we trade away Keenan Allen. We keep a restructured contract of Joey Bosa. And now it seems pretty damn clear that the Chargers need a wide receiver at 5 or whenever they decide to draft. As of right now, he's not wrong. Nolan's not wrong. Now, again, there were rumors, reports that Mike Williams would be a candidate to possibly come back to the team on the right deal. With Keenan not there and $20-something million saved, love to have him back now, all things considered. And we'll get to this in a bit. Jake, I think Mike Williams back changes, in my opinion, who the Chargers might target at wide receiver versus if he's not on this roster. Topic for a different day. Where do we go from here, Jake? Should we just flood these comments right now? How do you want to do this?
Please. I understand that everybody's in their feelings. This is for everybody to air everything out right now. Like I said, Dan and I will try to navigate this as best as we can with everybody and what they're feeling. So by all means, throw all the questions in the chat. Let's go.
Okay. Mighty asks, how many picks do we currently have? 10? I think there is 3 round 4 picks currently. Am I wrong? So they have obviously rounds 1 through 7, one of each.
Right.
2 round 7s. Now 2 round 4s.
Yes.
So 9 picks total is what the team has
Correct.
currently.
Yes.
Jeez. I'm still kind of shook here. The eye guy says, so trade back in the second?
That seems more plausible to me now. That seems more like a realistic option for the Chargers to trade back in the second. Like I said, I won't entirely put trading out of 5 out of the question, especially if it means for one of these other teams to jump up and try to get a quarterback. But when you have the likes of now Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors to for sure be there at 5, I don't think that you can afford to pass up either one of them as it relates to this team and what they currently have at the wide receiver group.
Shout out to the director. Apparently he says hello and it has sent a bunch of grieving Chargers fans to us. Friend of the show. Love you, the director. Looks like we have some Bears fans in here right now. Ariel says, y'all got fleeced. Bear down. My GM is the best.
Congratulations.
Let's not get it twisted. Y'all got a great player.
Yeah, nobody's mad about your team. Nobody's upset about you. Allow us to have our feelings.
Yes, fleeced is a little bit strong. Like, are Chargers fans surprised that they only got a 4th for Keenan? Yes. Chargers fans also know that he's 32 and was 30-something million of cap space. Like, the writing was on the wall. While people were not prepared for it, this was one of the things that could possibly happen. But again, Bears got a dude, man. He's the best receiver you guys have had in a minute.
Yeah, a lot of the chat that I started hearing after everybody was kind of going through the compensation for Keenan Allen. I think Doug Kayed, who had originally wrote the article about the Patriots kind of keeping a watch on the Big Four for possible trade candidates, that was on Tuesday when that report came out. Somebody went into that and took it a step further and said that the Patriots actually inquired on Keenan Allen for a trade, and a 4th round pick for them, they said, was actually too high. And now we have to remember this. I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with the value, but when you have a player who is 32 years old, regardless of the production that Keenan Allen put up last year, which was tremendous, the amount of cap space that the Bears took on with this contract was substantial. And anytime that you have any player like that, that's always going to drive the trade value down lower when it's a huge cap number that the other team has to take on. So who knows what he's ultimately going to have to restructure his contract to. I'm sure that he might. Who knows? But that's what happens. Keenan Allen's not 25, he's 32, but still put up ridiculous numbers last year for what he did. And
the best year of his career.
And I totally understand anybody who doesn't want to agree with the value back that the Chargers are getting. But you just didn't expect Keenan Allen to be the one that was going to be traded out of everybody.
No. A couple super chats, Jake. Let's keep these things rolling. Man, you guys are too kind with these. Hypothetically, we trade back to 11 with the Vikings, take their second round pick, says Nolan. Again, shout out to Nolan. What is most likely the picks for this trade? Now, again, Vikings, I believe, do not have a second round pick.
Did they give that
so
away?
You're looking at 2/3, I believe. Answer the question. I'll go back. I'll go look at the formula real quick.
I would still believe at 11 now. Okay. So hypothetically, you'd probably say, okay, Harrison Jr., Neighbors, Adunze, they're up probably off the board already. I don't see one of them falling to 11. If that's the case, then you have some defensive players that snuck into the top 10 and went a little bit earlier than you expected them to go.
I apologize. Minnesota has a second, no third.
Thank
so
you.
Get their second.
So in this case, okay, so you trade back to 11 with the Vikings, you get an extra second. Does this elevate Brian Thomas Jr.'s draft stock in this circumstance? Possibly.
Mitchell, maybe. Yeah.
It very well might. Hey, Chargers may have to double dip at wide receiver in this circumstance if they don't end up making a move in free agency. We talked about double dipping at a lot of different positions, and now for wide receiver, it's just become so much more apparent how badly the Chargers need yet another thing on this roster. We knew that wide receiver was going to be a priority for them. We knew that they were going to come out of the draft likely with one, but the need for it now, I think, goes beyond everything. If the reports came out of the combine that even Daniel Popper published, Dan, where he was talking about Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, how they want to prioritize, obviously, keeping Justin Herbert upright, but relying on the greatest asset that he has, and that is his right arm. But there has to be a strategy here somewhere. I don't know. You have all this cap space now. Do you decide to fill that with, one of the centers that's out there in the market, one of the linebackers out there in the market? Yes, the free agent crop isn't entirely picked yet, but do you just turn around and give that money to another wide receiver? Obviously, probably not at the amount that Keenan Allen was getting, maybe a little bit less. But in that circumstance, I know everybody would have just rather say, hey, just keep Keenan Allen for one more year, because a fourth round comp pick is probably what you would have gotten if you kept him this year and you let him walk after the 2024 season anyways. It probably would have been the same fair value in that circumstance. So draft strategy now is a little bit trickier to navigate.
Yes. They say Johan Cray says, we will trade back with the Vikings. They will give us Jefferson.
I love your optimistic thinking.
Is that even optimistic, honestly?
I mean, I don't want to go as far as to say.
Think about obviously, it would be awesome to have Justin.
Of course it was, but that Minnesota is not
going to be $35 million.
Minnesota is going to let Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson walk in the same season. Look, crazier things have definitely happened, but I don't see a chance that Minnesota lets Justin Jefferson walk. No way.
No, I agree. Jake, we have some people. Let's get to some draft impacts because of this. There's a lot of impacts here for this Chargers team, whether they go wide receiver now, whether they go tackle, trade back. I think a lot of it probably depends on what people think are going to happen at 5 and if they trade back or not. Jake, before we get to that, if you're tuning in from ESPN Radio, you can listen into the full show at LAC_Unleashed on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Let's continue. Jake, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors?
It's fun. We always end up coming back to this, the same question. Well, if you've been paying attention to the moves that the Arizona Cardinals have made over the last 24 hours, I think that they have their target in Marvin Harrison Jr. ready at 4. They had traded Rondell Moore earlier this morning, so that opened that up. We know that they had already, even though they got rid of DJ Humphries yesterday, that brought in Jonah Williams to supplant him, so they still have technically their bookend tackles, so they will not be probably pursuing Joe Alt at 4. So Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, has been their target from the get-go, and that's going to leave Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze in this particular case, I think, is the better question. And now that you don't have Keenan Allen,
you and I talked about it.
This is another tough conversation to have, because Dan makes a good point. If Keenan Allen was still on this team, Malik Neighbors just made so much sense in terms of the explosiveness, that type of game playmaker that the Chargers have needed for so long. Now that Keenan Allen is gone, in this particular system, Rome Odunze may actually make more sense to the Chargers. Now, to me, again, I think that you're not going to lose out either way. I love Malik Neighbors. I would be 100% in favor of them taking him at 5. But now the fact that your 1 and your 2 are gone, who do you think betters and I'm just saying this from a standpoint of how is this system, how is this coaching staff, what has it shown you from the free agent moves thus far in how they're trying to build this? They've obviously gone out and got 2 tight ends in free agency. They've brought more of a thumper of a running back in play. Rome Odunze, who a lot of people are very, very high on.
A lot of people have him as wide receiver too.
Yeah. Could be the guy at 5 if the Chargers end up sticking and picking and selecting a wide receiver at that position.
Yeah, $10 donation. Imagine not having, this is a glass half full comment, Jake. Imagine not having.
No, it's about a glass. It's about a glass 1/8 full.
One finger. There you go. Imagine not having those heart attack moments at the end of games anymore, because we can run the ball efficiently and take time off the clock to actually win games. I'm going to trust the process. Now, Chargers have been doing things to help pass block, run the ball. Totally. It's a different style of game now, obviously, without Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And in theory, being able to run the ball, run out the clock, sounds great to me. I agree. Doesn't change the fact that this effing sucks today, if we're being quite honest.
Doesn't.
Let's see here. We got sad face from the 515 area code. Knee deep in Bears and Chiefs fans, neck deep in sadness. Aren't we all neck deep in sadness right now?
Well said.
Good luck to you, my friend.
Well said.
At least another glass half full moment. At least the Chiefs didn't sign Mike Williams. ... Yet.
They signed Hollywood Brown.
Now. I know, but honestly, I'd rather them have Hollywood Brown than Mike Williams. I couldn't take that. Richard Ash, $5 donation. What do you think the staff's play is going to be with the extra cash? Great question. Another free agent running back? Or could it be a corner linebacker? Jake, honestly, you saw Jordan Fuller today. Again, I think it was a 2-year, $16 million contract at corner. Corner is probably where I'm looking. Corner and center are probably the 2 that I'm like, make it happen. Like, you got money. Those are 2 huge needs. Center, I could argue you probably should do before corner, because I think center is probably when you can get cheaper. Although now, I don't know. Those are the 2 positions I would look at. The guy from Miami, forget his name. Bozeman's another one. There's a bunch of centers out there, possibly. Jake, what about you?
I mean, I would feel that you'd have to have some plan for this extra cash that you just freed up. You're going to have to use it somewhere.
Right.
So you still currently don't have anybody hiking the ball to Justin Herbert as it stands right now. So getting a stopgap center would make a lot of sense. And whether that's Brian Allen, whether that's Bozeman, one of those two players would make a lot of sense. You got to fill your linebackers in some circumstance because you lost 3 of them this week. So I would assume we just saw 2 of them signed today. One of Dan's particular favorite targets. Remind me his name, Dan, from Buffalo. I'm losing it.
The linebacker. Honestly, I'm too emotionally disturbed right now to remember his name.
I get it. But who is it? Titus Bowser, who's still out there that could be had. Obviously, familiarity with Baltimore could be had on a low contract deal. So I would assume that to subvert
Tyrell Dodson, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. To subvert what you now have as a weakness, glaring holes with 2 wide receivers now missing in free agency. I'm not sure, Dan. What do you think the chances are? Again, the remaining free agents as it stands for wide receiver right now it's interesting. Would you think that they would just turn around and say, okay, Keenan Allen, we're going to take that money, get it send it to Chicago, and we're going to move it over here and pay another wide receiver, let's just say half the money for that. Does that make sense to you?
So like what, $15 million? Maybe? Like, could they go after, Ayuk from San Francisco? Could they trade for that? Maybe. Although that's going to be just as much as Keenan. At this point, the wide receiver group, I just don't think they're going to bring in another receiver if it's not Mike Williams. At least not one that you'd consider wide receiver 1 or 2.
And the reason I say that is because you look at the deals that Mike Evans and Calvin Ridley got. Those are now your new market setters. So
like 24 million-ish.
Yes. So how much is Brandon Ayuk going to command if the Chargers wanted to go out and sign him? Also, I still believe that you're gonna have some competition in signing a player like him if he ultimately does.
He's not a free agent though.
I thought
they'd have to trade for him. No, they'd have to trade for him. But you'd most likely would have to do a trade and re-sign.
Well, then it really doesn't make sense.
Let's get back to a couple of these real quick. Malik Neighbors in the first, Xavier Worthy or Leggett in the third. I saw another comment in here about if they kept Mike Williams, Malik Neighbors would go hard. If they kept Mike Williams, I'm back on the Neighbors train at 5 for sure. If not, then I probably would go. I mean, I guess they could double dip at wide receiver. I don't think Leggett's making it to third, honestly. Jake, was I wrong? Was I right?
You were correct. So it was my fault because we've heard so much talk about IU guys. For some reason, I thought he was.
No, you're good.
So apologies.
You're good. But if Mike Williams comes back, Malik Neighbors, hell yeah. I'm not doing Neighbor Xavier Worthy. Like those two, like no, you have no physicality. So I'm very low on Xavier Worthy. I literally would rather have Taj Washington in round like 5 or 4 than Xavier Worthy. Call me crazy. Ortiz said that Neighbors is the best wide receiver he ever scouted. I think that's false. I think that is a
I don't recall those comments.
Not a troll account, but a fake account. I think it's fake news. That's not real. Billy Silverman, excuse me. Maybe tomorrow wouldn't be a bad day for a press conference. Feels like chaos. It does feel like chaos. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a press conference. They need one. I think they know that. That's what comms teams get paid a lot of money for.
Look, you remember that scene, Dan, when in the Simpsons movie? I'm sure you do. Just after Homer had gone and, dumped the pig silo in the lake and caused the whole environmental thing, and then the news breaks. It's like, oh, it was from Homer, and then you just see everybody with pitchforks and fire and everything like that outside of Homer's house. I have a feeling that was basically what it was in the digital realm for Joe Ortiz this evening. It went from remembering everything about Tom Telesco, and then these last few hours have been directed at this new administration. I've seen some people say that they're completely done. Joe Ortiz has barely been in office for a month. Just remember, it was the old regime that really put this situation to where we are today.
Kevin A, right on cue, says it sucks, but this is the result of a Telesco and Staley regime that went all in on 2023. They failed, and this is the unfortunate result. It was going to happen. We'll be fine. Trust the process. Daniel Gomez says, we didn't create $22 million in cap space just to sign another big name wide receiver. We're looking to fill out the roster. 100%.
That's what I think.
Paradise Hills says, if you don't support Jim Harbaugh, then don't let the door hit you. There's a question there about T. Higgins. Jake, would you trade for T. Higgins?
First of all, if you traded for T. Higgins, because didn't they franchise tagged him, and so now but then Higgins said that he requested a trade, so now this would be a sign and trade deal essentially.
Yep.
So to me, the draft pick compensation is going to be higher, and the contract that you're going to take on is probably going to be in around the same number of in the same neighborhood as Keenan Allen.
Get it, neighborhood. I get it. Yep.
That was nice. So I don't know. To me, trading away draft stock after everything that we've heard and everything that we've talked about over the past month and a half. I mean, what type of Tom Telesco time machine are we trying to go back with right now? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Now, Hugo Boss says, double dip, Neighbors and Leggett. That I'd be down for. Because I've said for weeks now, Leggett would be my Mike Williams replacement if they wanted to go that route. Then Neighbors Cooks. I'll give you that. Jake, one thought I had as soon as I heard this, and I got the conversation, would you trade the 4th round pick to Arizona to move up one spot?
For MHJ?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, would it only cost a 4th?
Let's see. It would go, you have to spend, it's 100 points. Your 4th round draft pick is currently 84 points. So you can 4th.
You probably have to do a 4th and a sweetener. Me personally, I don't even think that I don't even think that the Arizona Cardinals pick up the damn phone. That's my thought.
Yeah. But would you do it?
If it only costs that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because from their eyes,
I would do it now. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have an extra 4th round. So yeah, if that's all it was going to cost, sure.
I wish a reporter would ask, WTF are you thinking keeping Bosa and trading Allen? Honestly, that one is a semi-fair question.
It is a fair question.
Did agree to take, well, I don't want to say less money. He did agree to a restructure, which most likely will probably be void years. And Keenan Allen, according to reports, did not. But it's a hard pill to swallow if you're telling me that the Chargers decided to keep Bosa over Allen. Now, that being said, remember this new era of Chargers football and the guys they brought in. Jim Harbaugh's teams win on defense and physicality. And Jesse Minter gets his guys. He's got his 2 bona fide edge players plus a rising star in Tuli.
He said he wanted to coach all 3 of them.
So, but I would have never thought that they would have kept Bosa and shipped Allen. I would have thought that if it was one, it would have been both of those guys gone. KG Comics says, I hope we somehow get Neighbors, Powers, Johnston, and Robin Wilson. But see, Neighbors and Robin Wilson, that's they're not the same archetype, but that's the same. It's the same benefit that they bring. They're both kind of that yak speed threat, which isn't bad, but you don't have a physical receiver other than Josh Palmer. That's kind of it. Jake, let's take a second here. Take a breather. Let's talk about our friends. Let's pay the bills. Bet online.
Want to tell everybody about how to get into all the sports action out there. It's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite or least favorite players And you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em entry. Get every pick right. Take home some cold hard cash. Use the promo code Unleashed and get your first deposit doubled up to $500 by Underdog. Going over to Underdog Fantasy today and let them know that Chargers Unleashed sent you.
Stephen Rutledge says Popper said Bosa and Mack took pay cuts. Jay, can you confirm that? Did you hear that? I knew that Mack did. Did Bosa as well?
Yes, I think it was, if I remember from Popper's report, I think Mack's cap hit went from, I think it was 23 to 19 million. And then I can't remember the exact numbers that he was talking about with Bosa, but he had talked about the adjusted numbers that each one of them was going to count against the cap with their restructures this year.
Okay. So again, if we go back to brass tacks here, the Chargers now have Bosa and Mack and Tuli. They traded Keenan for a fourth. They saved like $48 million of cap money. I do think we should talk about this for a second. And I know there's a lot of people that are sour on Joey Bosa, and I get it. And honestly, I'm kind of there with a lot of you, but not for the reasons I think some people have. Like, in my eyes, it's purely the money that he's costing this team, the contract he has, his production has gotten nowhere near equal to how much he's being paid. That's where I have the problem. Like, if Bosa was doing what Khalil Mack did last year, I'd get it. Like, I would get it. And for weeks now, I've said the only way that Bosa stays with this team, in my opinion, is if he restructures. Because there's no way in hell I am paying him that 30 whatever it is $million contract. There's just no way. And that's what happened. And so being able to kind of dish it out and spread out that money across, have him take a little bit of pay cut, which is crazy that he did it. I do think, though, Jake, one of the biggest reasons why he did it is because of the guy right next to him. Like, it has been long reported how close these two guys are and how long that they have kind of connected. We've been there at training camp, and we've seen those guys connected at the hip almost every practice, doing drills together side by side, pick each other's brains. They've talked publicly about how much they mean to each other. Khalil Mack came here, was okay with coming here because of Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa's talked about how close they are. If it was flipped, and let's say Mack didn't do it, and it was up to Joey to go first, I think Joey walks. I think Joey just says, "Eh." I think Khalil Mack going first was like a, dude, let's have a heart-to-heart here for a second. Let's try to run it back. We haven't seen what we could do, our potential. I think that's what happened.
This is my theory on the situation as it stands with Joey Bosa currently right now. And as Dan said, I totally understand everybody that's in their feelings in terms of Bosa and, you know, whatever it is that you want to feel about him, but he's back. He agreed to his restructure. Again, I don't think that we ever would have expected, again, out of the big four, when we've been talking about this for the last several weeks, that it was going to be Keenan Allen not on this team instead of Joey Bosa remaining. But here's my theory as it relates to Joey Bosa, because as Jeremy Fowler reported over the past week, the Chargers were fielding calls on trades on all of the big four candidates. And this is my opinion, just kind of reading the waters. This is not reports from anywhere. This is just my own thoughts on the matter. Let's not forget, Joey Bosa has missed significant time over the last 2 years. Now, Daniel Popper had talked about that he believed that if the trade was to happen, that Joey Bosa had more value than Mack did. And specifically, a lot of that weight was because of the fact that Joey Bosa was 28 years old. Now, the injuries have really ravaged him and his playing time and his production over the last 2 years. I think if you're the Chargers, the best case scenario, and of course, this is a big ask because this has not happened in a while, but if you could get Joey Bosa to play a full season, which is a challenge within itself, as of recent history tells us, and you get that production to bump up, I think you elevate his trade value back to where it should have been. I think that the Chargers were 100% fielding calls on Joey Bosa.
Yeah,
and probably
sure.
whatever it was that they ended up getting back, they didn't like it. And I'm sure that they were exhausting all their possibilities, and this restructure obviously was one of them. But if they would have gotten something that was worthwhile in letting Joey Bosa go, I would assume that they would have done that. And in this particular circumstance, I think they went to the next plan, which was restructure. Joey Bosa agreed to it. He remains with the team along with Khalil Mack for this next year. But I think that's the long-term plan that the Chargers are taking.
$2 donation from Mighty. Bring back Telesco with a whole bunch of crying faces.
Look, I know I know today is a tough day.
No,
but I don't know if I want to go back to that.
Don't forget why you're here. Like, let's just calm down. Nature's Call Podcast, $5 donation. Shout out. Thank you so much. When moves like this correlate to wins for this team, I'll accept this. Until then, I'm going to be mad that we watched another all-timer leave. Now, again, thank you. This is kind of, and I was actually thinking about this, Jake. Those are some big ass shoes to fill for the next receiver or receivers that come onto this team. Marvin Harrison Jr., the league neighbors, Roma Dunze, doesn't matter. Whoever that is going to be looked at and compared to what Keenan Allen is. And while you can talk your way through it and understand the economics and, the new vision and new owners, like new leadership on the team and, just them needing to kind of move on with Band-Aid, like that's still a perennial Pro Bowler, over 10,000 yards for this franchise that you just let go. And that's a tough pill for Chargers fans to swallow if you're not replacing it with somebody who has that kind of potential. On the flip side, we've heard so many times people talk about like needing to create a winning offense and a winning team and what wins, toughness and physicality and a run game and trench warfare and all that jazz. If the Chargers win that way, to his point, it's going to soften this blow. Unfortunately, they can't win a Super Bowl tomorrow. Like, you're not going to see a win until September, hopefully. But there's a lot of pressure on this next draft class, especially if it's a receiver, which sure as hell looks like it's going to be, to kind of get this thing going.
I want to bring this up because he was referencing, I said literally rip the Band-Aid off. Now let's make it clear which Band-Aid I was talking about. Dan and I definitely were not
wounds.
Yeah. Dan and I were definitely not talking about the wide receiver Band-Aid, that's for sure. I was saying that I was okay prior to free agent frenzy officially kicking off, that I was okay with, I had just mentally accepted where Khalil Mack was in his career, albeit fantastic year for the Chargers. But in a new regime with Tuli, I just felt like, I was okay with the idea of just saying, move away from whether it was Mack or whether it was Bosa or hell, even if it ended up being both. And if you ended up getting trade compensation for them, hey, that's great. And that you move forward and you get a new young edge rusher to pair with Tuli, I was okay with that. Apparently, there was a different multiverse out there that had a different situation in mind for ultimately what ended up playing out because Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are both here for another year.
Yeah, honestly, shout out to Benjamin with the kind words. Love the show. Keep up the good work. Thank you guys. This crazy part, Jake, this might be the most people we've ever had in a live show. And it is 10:15 on a Thursday night.
Appreciate everybody staying up for this.
Yeah, and I know this is not what we all wanted to be discussing right now. Although I think there is like I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but I'm saying anyways. Like, there is positives to this. Like,
oh, you better
well, hold on, no. Just like from like a franchise perspective, like 30,000 foot view here for a second, right? Like, while this is a dark day for Chargers fans in terms of like, you think back to when LT goes to the Jets or Michael Turner or Darren Sproles, or you think back to Phillip Rivers going to the Colts, like all that, like it sucked, right? But like Phillip Rivers goes to the Colts and then here comes Justin Herbert. Like it sucked then, but are you saying, I wish they would have kept Bolo? Like sucked. But like
I think it's hard to comprehend.
Like, Marvin Harrison balls out. Balls out. Like, are you sitting here saying, they should have?
No, but I'm not totally discounting the actual standpoint, the positive. The reason it's hard to process that right now, Dan, is because for the next 40 days, it's essentially a question mark. You don't know how they're going to fill those holes now that they have put out there.
It's the fear of the unknown.
So sure. I get the potential of this possibly turning into some good news, because we don't know how the Chargers are going to use that free agent money. We still technically, even though it leans heavily towards them prioritizing a wide receiver early, we still don't know who they're going to take. And until those moves are done, those question marks are still going to linger. So I think that's the problem that everybody is processing right now, is that, and this is why you're always the optimist out of the two of us, because you think of stuff like this, but we're still in our feelings. We're still in our glass case of emotion and how we have to deal with this. This is probably the first time that I revert back to my alter primary ego of pessimistic Jake. And I tell you what, it's been a minute since I've felt like this, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I know, as much as I like to spew on here when I get in my feelings and sound ultra pessimistic and the antithesis of Dan Wolkenstein in that circumstance, but yeah, this is the worst reason to be in this particular mood.
Kevin A says Brady left the Patriots, many left the Broncos. It will be okay. Okay, real talk.
Okay, great.
So like this is not what you think it is. How are the Patriots doing since he left, by the way? And how the Broncos do once Manning left? It will probably be okay, but those two are not examples of why it will be okay, because those franchises are still looking for a quarterback.
They're still looking for their quarterbacks.
Yep. Let's see. Gio, let's kind of go rapid fire here. Jake's catch up. We don't win anything for a long time now. We have to trust the process. We will build a powerful and strong teams to bully other teams. We don't need Allen. When he says we don't win anything for a long time, what do you think the window actually is currently before playoff berth? I think it's this year. I know you can call me crazy, but you drafted a receiver early with the money they have left over for free agency. Like, I think they could cook pretty quick.
There is still, for everything that we have said about Jim Harbaugh over these last few months, and I understand from a roster standpoint that there are so many question marks, and they got even bigger today. There's just something that tells me, because as I said earlier this week, and it's a notion that I have always felt, is that coaching can be that ultimate gap of deficits, can fill those holes. So whether it's injuries or whether maybe it's bad depth at certain positions, when you have great coaching, that could supplant a lot of those to where your drop down isn't as heavy. Now, what we have experienced with this Chargers team for the better part of the last 10 years, outside of mediocre and bad results, it's from a roster standpoint, the roster construction was bad. It was top heavy, and you didn't have the coaching that could elevate your 2s and your 3s, that when you had an injury to a star player go down, that the drop off wouldn't be as bad as it was with the Chargers when they had injuries. So I still have faith in what Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, and the rest of this coaching staff is going to be able to put out on the field. I still can't wait, as Brett Coleman said, to see 11 coked out pterodactyls on the field on defense and what they're going to create like that. But Jim Harbaugh has a track record of success. And when he has taken franchise that have languished in mediocrity and very poor results to what he has done immediately when he has gotten there. So it is still going to be tough when you still have to contend with the Chiefs in your own division. But I still think that, yeah, I'll have faith that the Chargers can make the playoffs this year.
I think they do. I think they do too. Coaching staff, Lionel Turner says, I think people are forgetting we actually have the most important thing, a vastly improved coaching staff. A lot of people here talking about the wide receiver class here. A lot of people are asking for trading for T. Higgins. I just don't think they're in a position to where they could trade capital and acquire a big ticket player. Like, those are both things that you can't afford to give up right now. Like they just ripped the hearts out of Chargers fans by cutting Keenan Allen to save $20 million. You think they're going to do that just to sign T. Higgins and trade away the asset they got from him? Like, I don't want to be the receiver that the Chargers trade for after they cut Keenan Allen. Like, no, no way. Jake, a lot of people asking about some of these prospects. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Rome Odunze, I think he's 6'3". Let me check that. Rome Odunze.
6'2".
6'3" according to Yahoo, according to Google. But
6'2" is what he measured in at the combine.
Okay. So, Jake, we talked about it. And I was glad you're the one that said it first, because I was probably going to get a whole bunch of shit if it was me saying it. But Rome Odunze might be the guy at 5. If they had to go for the one who can kind of be that possession guy, kind of be everything to this team, he might be Odunze. Like, Malik Neighbors is my favorite receiver in this draft class. I think he's the most explosive receiver in this draft class. I think he's probably the most fun to think about being paired with Justin Herbert. But without Keenan Allen, without that safety net, I don't think Malik Neighbors is that type of receiver. Like, yes, he's a 1, but they need to have like the third and Allen type. And are you saying that's going to be Josh Palmer? He's on his last year of his contract. I'm not sure how that's going to go. Quentin Johnston, are you going to rely on that? I'm not sure. Rome Odunze, I think he might be the other than Marvin Harrison Jr., he might be the most polished and well-rounded receiver in the class. And he'd be wide receiver 1 and most, and also balled out.
He also plays very physical. Plays very physical as well.
Yeah, so he's kind of like a Mike Williams, Keenan Allen blend, if you will. Like, he does everything well, and he's big. But again, if somebody told me that crystal ball, you'll get Malik Neighbors and Xavier Legette, like, cook. But would I rather have Malik Neighbors and Xavier Legette or Rome Odunze and Taj Washington? Like, given I can use my assets of draft capital to go get something else and get a receiver in the 4th versus having to spend it on the 2nd, I don't know. Again, this is the part that sucks. I want Malik Neighbors, but I think the chances of Malik Neighbors being the pick now went down because of getting rid of Keenan Allen. In my eyes. Timmy says, look at the roster. We need defense, and the draft is bad for it. Jake? I don't necessarily agree with the draft.
There's a few positions that you could say for that. Linebacker is not a very deep class. Interior defensive line, I think we expected that to look a lot better. And fortunately, the Chargers need now one of those, considering that they signed Puna Ford today for some help for the interior. But still, you need to get younger, you need to get bigger, you need to get faster. Could you find?
Quick, Jake, hold on, real quick. Sweet Jump says, Odunze a technician? No. Yes. Yes, he is. Sorry. Continue.
You need to get bigger in that defensive line. So again, it's not the best talent there, but at corner Corner, I have still put a high priority on for this draft class. I still think that there's no way that the Chargers can come out of day 2 without another corner to put across from Asante Samuel Jr. There is absolutely no way. And this corner class has very much sold out. And I think it's deeper and more respectable than a lot of people thought. There's a lot of different ways that the Chargers could go as it relates to corner. Are you going to put a lot of faith in Jasir Taylor to be your slot corner? You could target a slot corner in this draft. You definitely need an outside corner to pair outside of Asante Samuel Jr. So corner is a huge need for this, for the Chargers in this particular sense. And I get it from what you currently have right now. When you look at the depth chart of the defense specifically, there are question marks and holes all over the place. The Chargers need that. It's really going to come down to where are they going to prioritize it now. You have a little bit of capital now at the top part of day 3 to hopefully help do that, whatever that position may be. But you still got plenty of positions to prioritize in offense as well. And this is another reason why I don't believe that the Chargers would now trade that draft capital to go out and sign X player, even with the money they have. It just doesn't make sense with as many holes as they have left to fill.
Jake, we got to go faster. We're getting flooded. We're getting flooded here. Herbo 7 for 11 for $115, but 250 yards rushing with the way this roster is going. $5 donation by Nolan. I mean, I don't think it's. I know this is a dark day, but like, I think Justin's going to throw it to whoever. I don't think he cares. I mean, yes, he wants Keenan, obviously, but fast forward several months, I don't think he's going to be like, I'm only going to throw it to Josh Palmer. Like, I just don't, or whoever the draft class is. KJ says, Jake, no more possession receivers. These are all caps, by the way. I would yell, but it's too late for that. We've lacked explosion forever. Come on, Danny Dan. Look, I'm not saying they don't need explosion. I'm just saying in an offense like what we've seen historically from Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman and Stanford and San Francisco and Michigan, show me a Malik Neighbors type.
Dan and I'm sure a bunch of Chargers fans were expecting speed, explosion, game maker playing last year for the wide receivers as far as what the Chargers were expected to get. And they didn't get it then. And that is something that the Chargers have lacked for the better part of 10 years, that they haven't had that element. But Malik Neighbors would have made all the sense in the world at 5 if Keenan Allen was still on this roster. I mean, it made a ton of sense. But now the fact that you don't have that anymore, again, we're just thinking in general what the team may be thinking. Mm-hmm. Rome Odunze may end up being the better fit considering that Keenan Allen is no longer here.
Yep. Gary Rockwell says, where do you think Ladd McConkey will be available? Thank you for the $2 donation. I think you got to pick him up at the second or he's gone. I would say top half of the second round is where he goes. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes sense. You kind of look at the wide receivers between 8. You're probably looking between 8 and 10 that you're going to get within the first 50 picks easily. Could be more than that. And yeah, just the way that he's been testing and what he's done over the past several weeks. Yeah, if that's your idea and you choose to trade down and then you pass on a wide receiver in the first round, if he's still there in the second, I say you grab him or he's gone.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Let's see. QJ, it's got a lot of QJ talk here. QJ is not a deep threat and he can't run curls. What can he do? Next question. Joe Ortiz drafted Zay Flowers. Malik Neighbors is like Flowers, but on juice.
Which is true.
Mm-hmm. So they have one. They have one example, kind of.
I mean, and it's a good example. It's a good example in terms of who was partly responsible for selecting Zay Flowers, and now the fact that he is part of this Chargers front office, and I totally get that.
But Zay Flowers is not your wide receiver 1. Like, he's not a wide receiver 1. I'm sorry. Like, he's a great wide receiver 2 to have.
Are you talking about What? Because he sure looked like a wide receiver one for Baltimore, Dan.
No,
Are
but
you
he
trying to
shouldn't
say
be.
that he? Okay. Are we going to go back to our 2023 discourse here
No, we're
between
past
you and
that.
I and
We're
Zay
past that.
Flowers? let's
No,
not dig up those skeletons.
Again, like Zay Flowers is nice, but like he's not a wide receiver one, or he shouldn't be. If he's your wide receiver two, you're cooking. Chaz says, "Do you guys think Herbert should have restructured his contract for Allen?" No, he shouldn't have to spend his money.
Let's all forget the Chargers after Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack restructured theirs, and Mike Williams was gone. There wasn't any pressure here. The Chargers were cap compliant. Obviously, they wanted to open up some more space because of what they did, but it wasn't like there was a huge amount of pressure to get that done. They could have made the choice to not do this. Mm-hmm. So they were still not necessarily with a move remaining that they were still over the cap and needed to do it. So no, I don't think that was a situation that needed to play out at all.
I would agree. Let's see here. Let's get a couple of these super chats. You guys are the best, man. Mason says the initial shock was brutal, starting to cool down and interested to see what the front office does the rest of the way. Agreed. I know, like, there is no combating the emotions right now. And there's nothing that's going to make you feel better other than time and kind of
a little bit of Delmar.
And bourbon. And bourbon. There you go.
A little bit of Delmar.
I get it. Tim with a $10 donation. Damn, you guys are throwing dollar bills out. We got to do these late night shows more often when people are a little tipsy. This is great. If we can run the ball better, it will be okay without Keenan Allen or tight end. But defense is clearly an issue. Not many players out there that I can see. We need D-line and linebacker and corner. It's a lot to ask. Okay, again, linebackers looking a little thin in free agency. Not going to lie. Edge,
I think that's an understatement.
There's still some guys, but again, honestly, like you don't really need one. Interior defensive line, I think they're okay. They could probably maybe do one more. Corner, linebacker, I think both of those you can get in the draft. Although I probably would rather see them go. I think I'd rather see them do one linebacker in free agency.
And I think that's the
use
play.
Capital. And use capital for the draft.
I think you sign one, and then wherever you choose to prioritize linebacker, which still could be high because again, the free agent linebacker market is very weak right now. So if we're targeting a Edrin Cooper, a Peyton Wilson, a Junior Colson, as it relates to this linebacker class, if you put that high of a priority on it, to hypothetically say that your pairing is going to be that player and Daiyan Henley, okay. But yeah, there's a couple positions that the Chargers need to double dip here. And center's one, linebacker could be another. I don't think that you go out and you go free agent in the draft as it relates to corner. And I say that just from the standpoint of you need to get younger at the corner position. You need to get faster. You need to get a lower price tag on it because there still is no guarantee that Asante Samuel Jr. is going to see a second contract. And as Dan and I have talked about previously, Asante Samuel Jr. was the highest priority that this franchise had put at the cornerback position since Jason Verrett. It has been
in the draft.
Yes, in the draft. It had been very poorly prioritized. And you need to start prioritizing that again.
Yep. Question here, Jake. What about Hunter Renfrow? Asked Mike Titus. He got released today?
It was yesterday that they ended up releasing him. That would be an interesting signing.
Because the Raiders had the same, they call it third Renfrow. At least they did until they stopped playing him.
Yeah, and you probably could get him on a very low price tag. I think I'm trying to picture in my head because right now, as it would probably stand, is today what your wide receiver room looks like is Joshua Palmer would take over your Keenan Allen duties. Quentin Johnston would slide into the Mike Williams role. Again, obviously that's not going to stay that way, but that's what you would say now. I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the question, considering what the Chargers are going to need over the middle. If their priority really is to make this a much more balanced offense, running heavy, could still get a couple of shots over the middle. Hunter Renfrow is a guy that could separate over the middle. Sure, I wouldn't put it out. I wouldn't put it out of question.
Yeah, me neither.
I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be over the moon about it. I don't think that would necessarily. If it were me and given the choice, I would rather take a Dunze over Hunter Renfrow, 100%.
Well, obviously, but would you do both? I think I would have to do both, and also there are probably a handful of guys in this draft that are like Renfrow on steroids.
I think the reason if that would be the case, because it's okay, so you'd have a Dunze, you'd have Renfrow in that circumstance, and then you would have Palmer, who kind of has played a little bit of the hybrid Keenan Allen role, and he's done some go routes as well going downfield. But God, I mean, that would just seem like such a short 10 by 10 by 10 offense with a running game. So I feel like if you were going to do that, you'd have to get another receiver that's at least going to help you stretch the field.
Yeah. Let's see. Jefferson going to be Charger soon. Jake, what say you?
Wait, the neighbors is a wide receiver 1, but the smart thing to do is draft Alt at 5 and convert him to a slot.
No, the one before this was Jefferson going to be a Charger soon.
No, not that I would. That I wouldn't want him to be a Charger, but Minnesota's not letting him go. Come on.
Now, Neighbors is a wide receiver 1, but the smart thing to do is draft Alt at 5 and convert him to a slot. Slot corner.
I'll say this. I'll say this. Dan and I asked to bring this up because I know that there was a lot of people who pushed back on Brett Coleman's position as far as what he felt that the Chargers were going to do when trading back, and that they were going to target an offensive lineman. Well, shortly before we jumped on this show, Brett Coleman messaged Dan Wolkenstein. Of course, this was in reaction to the Keenan Allen trade. And in so many words said to Dan, forget everything that I said yesterday about the offensive tackle position. Just tear it up and throw it out the window. All bets are off on that now.
Yeah. I think everyone is surprised by this, obviously. Max Hutchinson says, Adunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. fit the wide receiver 1 mold the best if he had to bet the house. I'd probably agree. Mighty asks, is Jalen Guyton alive? Yes, he is. Let's see. HH4 says neighbors can play inside or outside. Best deep threat in the draft. That is true. I agree. Let's keep this thing going. Keenan is going to regret not making a deal. He's going to be in cold ass Chicago trying to help a prima donna quarterback in the league. Whoever the quarterback is not going to be as good as Justin Herbert, at least in the short term. Brandon Wright, Jake, says the whole Keenan Allen thing stinks, but I'm starting to come around. We need money. There are going to be post-draft cuts. Hopefully we can use some of this money to pick up some help. So many needs.
I guess it's around the 30 million mark now that the Chargers have in available cap space in getting rid of the Keenan Allen contract. So they're going to have money to spend, and I'm sure you're probably going to see some corresponding moves. I would assume though at other positions, not wide receiver, that they're going to spend this money on prior to the draft. But yes, to Brandon's question, there's always surprise cuts when it comes to right after preseason. And you may need to sign some players either prior to training camp, after training camp, right before the season. And there could be some surprise names in that circumstance.
Yeah, Mighty came back. I mean, why does no one talk about him? Obviously, I know this, Mighty. If we're being honest, how great was Jalen Guyton last year? Was he the savior we all thought he was going to be? I don't know. That's why no one's talking about him. It's my guess. Lunatic Gaming 999999 says, what about Xavier Worthy? Speed kills. Speed does kill, but speed alone does not kill. We have seen plenty of wide receivers that have crazy fast 40 times.
Speed kills, but speed alone does not kill. I'm sure some people tried to tell Al Davis that once upon a time when he was drafting Darius Hayward Bay and guys like that.
There's a joke there. I'm not going to say it about who they selected after that in speeding, but I'm just going to leave it. Carson Junk says, Dan, you've been on Team Neighbors since day one. With Keenan gone, what changes the narrative for Odunze? Yes, I have been leading that train on Neighbors since day one, or at least part of that caboose, if you will. I think if this team wants a player that is going to be high volume, I don't think that's Neighbors. Like, I think if they want a volume pass catcher, while Neighbors can be that, and he can play inside, outside, he can do fast, he can do yak, jet sweep, whatever. He can do it all. But I don't see him as that archetype. Like, Odunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. are like the same-ish archetype. Malik Neighbors is a different. He's like a Jamar Chase type. They're not the same. Again, you can't go wrong, but I think Rome Odunze, provides more all-around wide receiver skill sets than Malik Neighbors. I would still love Malik Neighbors. Like, don't get me wrong. But without having the Keenan Allen skill sets, I said it before, I think the Rome Odunze stock is way up now. Is it over Malik Neighbors? It might be 50-50 right now, if it was up to me. I don't know. Jake, right now, if it was you, between those two on the left, between the two, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors. If it was you, who are you picking?
It's a very tough decision to make because I don't think that the Chargers can go wrong with any one of the three, especially in the wide receiver situation they are now. If it was me, I would lean towards Neighbors just because, again, that explosive element is just something that the Chargers just have not had. Mm-hmm. But Odunze is just so enticing for what this team needs right now.
That's a hard question, dude. Like, before, it was not a hard question. It would be Neighbors, slam dunk, no problem. Now it's a hard one. And honestly, I think about the double dip scenario and what would actually work. Like, if they went Malik Neighbors, they would have to have I think they'd have to get a possession guy like a Xavier Legette. Maybe they can go like the other Washington receiver, Jalen Polk, maybe McMillan, maybe. Whereas if they want to Odunze, I think there's a lot of those yak speed guys you can get later, and that would afford you to be able to go get like a corner or center or linebacker or whatever. I don't know, man. Top for different day. Let's get through these. JP, let's do like maybe 10 more minutes, because it's getting late, dude. We're about to get to Friday. Aaron says, I'm taking Neighbors over Odunze every day of the week. Yeah, I get it. Xavier Worthy says, Antoine Wayland, 160-pound speed kill, especially when he gets hit by a truck. Yep. Let's see. Infinite Mind says, Tyreek Hill didn't help the Dolphins. He's good, but this is a team sport. Wide receivers don't play defense. Okay, bit of a stretch. Like, yeah, true, but like Tyreek Hill would be lovely. And again, but
31 other teams on their roster would love to have a Tyreek Hill, regardless if they had nobody playing defense.
Yeah, and honestly, like, Tyreek Hill is so much more than just speed. Like, that guy is arguably the quickest and fastest player in the entire NFL. Let's see. Trade Bosa in the draft. I don't see the team doing that after they're doing a restructure. Here's a couple super chats, Jake. We are all number 13 tonight. The Pats survived by trading a year early instead of a year late. Use a fourth to trade up for Marvin Harrison Jr. talked about that before. Look, the lead story here is Chargers fans are hurting right now. Even if you like this, even if you like the fact that they're ripping the Band-Aid and it's a fresh start and they're just kind of starting over and they have the cat, like, it still stings. Keenan Allen, I think he and Bosa were the only San Diego Chargers left on this roster. And honestly, I never thought that Bosa would be the last man standing.
Yeah.
Never. Another one. Odds of a trade back and double dip at wide receiver in the second. Sorry, really just want a damn trade back.
As do I, Nolan. As do I. I've been clamoring for a trade back for 10 years. And the football gods, they like to prey on Chargers emotions, I think really dug one into us today, because not only do you jettison one of the greatest Chargers of all time, that trading back scenario is just, I don't want to say necessarily less likely, but it's a little bit tougher to walk away from that, considering what your wide receiver room currently looks like. And you're now in a position where you could get either a Neighbors or a Dunze. It's just, it's tough to possibly walk away from that. Hopefully one of two situations that are playing out. Number one, half of it is Minnesota ponies up, comes up, grabs JJ McCarthy. You go back to 11. I still, unfortunately, don't believe that any one of those three receivers, obviously Marvin Harrison will not, but nor will Neighbors or a Dunze make it to pick 11. So does that mean that you draft Brian Thomas at that position? Who knows? I don't know. But
receiver again.
There will be. Remember how I like to say that we'll have the cardiologist ready in certain circumstances during Chargers game for that whole, however long that takes to play out before the Chargers ultimately draft a wide receiver. Yeah, you better get the cardiologist ready. But that type of situation now, just because of
for the next 4 years,
just because of who will not be available at 11, it just makes it so much harder to now not trade out of the fifth spot.
Yeah, honestly, if they get to 11, those three are gone, I'm not drafting a receiver then.
I wouldn't either.
I'm not doing it. I'd probably go corner.
Either.
I think I'm going corner if I had a pick there. Or tackle, one of the two. Scumbag Ryan says, I woke up my girlfriend to vent her about this.
She didn't care.
She didn't care.
Oh, man. You know what? That is okay. First of all,
please tell your girlfriend thank you.
Thank you, and that's great. That's a great story. But second of all, thank you for coming here to vent out your feelings about this, because you're in good company with everybody in the chat and everybody on the show.
Oh man, that was good. I needed that. Go get Deebo Samuel, says H84. Jake?
Again, here we go. Are we trading away capital now for what we just got? I just can't see that happening.
No. Antoine Wayland, shout out to you, my friend. Says, please like and subscribe. Great live stream. Bolt fans needed to vent about this. Thank you. R.I.P. Slay. Okay, he's not dead. But as a Charger, that still sucks. But yeah, please hit the like and subscribe. Helps out a ton. Infinite Mind says, I agree, but I'm hurting, but I'm moving on. Looking forward to the future. James Wagner says, this Band-Aid does suck. Can't replace the class player Keenan is. Nobody worked harder at their craft. Sweet Jump says, I'm going to go watch some of Doomsday videos. We already addressed
I would advise everybody else do the same.
Yep. Let's see. What is our run game looking like after Gus? We need help. So again, they signed Gus Edwards.
You'll probably end up drafting a running back at some point in the draft as well.
There's rumors of a J.K. Dobbins reunion possibly happening, just because the connections with the Ravens and Joe Ortiz. They got Will Disley, who's a great run blocker. So they're up there. H4 says they left a dumpster fire. Give the new regime an opportunity to build something great. Let's see. Forgotten Locale says, I got a wellness call from my brother. What was the response? I'm curious. What did you say back to your brother?
I mean, dude, I just got, when I started getting texts from people too, and all they were just one word. That was it. It was just like, but it wasn't even that. It was just like, dude, or, oh. But I knew exactly what they were referring to when I got it.
Mm-hmm. Former Chargers Unleashed co-host of Blueprints, Jason says, guys, go to bed. Look, we're about to. Although I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
It's only 7:51 where he's at right now.
Oh, he says, Lord, let me get in there. I got an hour in me. We can all go.
See, there he is. Yeah, because he's in an earlier time zone.
Oh, man. We're rounding out here as we get out of here for a second. Last call. Bring your questions. We'll go rapid fire here for the next 3 or 4 minutes. Kapil says, I just came back from a basketball game and I'm pissed. Yeet God says, guys, we are cooked. Greg says, seems like wide receiver is a pick in round 1. What do you think happens in round 2? Corner.
It's got to be, if you go wide receiver at 5, you better be taking a corner with your second round pick. No question about it.
Zach Benson asks, how long before the team allows another player to don 13?
Oh. Look,
it's tough.
If the goodbye letter that Spanos wrote just before we hopped on this podcast with the thank yous to Keenan Allen, I would hope personally that they would think it's important enough to not have anybody wear that jersey again. You're talking about arguably the greatest wide receiver in the history of the franchise. I personally don't think that anybody should wear that jersey again.
I agree. Same with 85, honestly. So would you be willing to trade down in the second round, pick 37? 1,000%. No questions asked. Jake, anything else in here we should cover? Soccer's got a question here. Trey Pipkins good enough not to draft Joe Alt at 5. Joe needs to convince Jim to draft a wide receiver.
Look, to me, it's just it's this whole idea of a tackle at 5, especially now. Like we just said, Brett Coleman messaged Dan after his whole explanation on why, even with Trey Pipkins, that you should still take a tackle, not necessarily even at 5, but in a trade down. He even messaged Dan just before we jumped on the show and said, forget everything I just said. So I think everybody else nationally is now going to have to be forced to understand that the Chargers cannot go tackle at 5 now.
Yeah, I think I would agree. At least not like at 5, no way. At 5, there's I'm gonna be dying inside right now. Paradise Sale says, cheer up, Jake. Hello, winning.
I was curious. He was saying, like, I've never seen Jake Hefner like this before. First of all,
I've seen Jake Hefner like this a lot.
I was going to say, how long have you been watching the show? Second of all, this type of session right here is what makes me feel better. And I don't want to necessarily say cheer up, because this is going to linger with me for a little bit with this whole Keenan Allen trade, but you get through it one way or another.
Yeah, Chargers fans will go into suicide watch, says Johnny DeJesus, if they go anything but wide receiver at 5. It's either wide receiver or trade down.
Yep.
Let's see. Derek Lawson, Jake, says, might as well put Trey Pipkins at wide receiver 1.
Wait, didn't they have a play this past year that ended up getting called back? And because they were trying one where an offensive lineman is an eligible receiver to go downfield. And Pip actually caught it, but it ended up getting called back. So, yeah. Hey, as of right now, yeah.
Daniel Guzman asks, what happens if they end up carding, I think he said later, trading? What happens if they end up trading Bosa as well?
I just don't see that playing out right now. I know some people have already asked during the draft that ends up taking place. I would be shocked if at this point, after all the work that has been done, if the Chargers ultimately ended up moving off of Bosa. I really would. That would just put them in an even tougher situation than they are right now.
Yep. Forgotten locale. At least we're getting that new facility or whatever. KG
Hey,
Comics
see?
says
Great spots.
Pickens at tight end, actually.
I mean, it would make the
Jake.
most sense.
All right, Jake. I feel like we've kind of gone through the emotions here. We can also just play some like elevator music for 10 minutes to just keep cycling through a bunch of these comments.
We should have opened the show with like, like the old Incredible friend. You could have played it with that, or like the old theme from the Incredible Hulk TV show, where it's just like the few piano notes when he's just walking down the street and hitchhiking. Just very somber music. I feel like we missed an opportunity there at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, or like the piano keys from Scream. That would have worked. Forgotten Locale says a moment of silence. Could have done it. Play some Enya. We have some suggestions in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is tough, man. Like, this is tough for everybody. A lot of people are asking about Higgins or Ayuk. We've seen this like 47 times in this chat. We've talked about it a few times earlier in this episode. They could. It doesn't make any sense for them to do what they just did, only to go back and do that again.
Agreed.
Let's end it on this. Last question. And again, if you have not already done so, please hit the like and subscribe. How long before Chargers fan grab the pitchforks and turn on Ortiz?
I feel like digitally that already happened. I feel like everybody, when the news finally broke on this, I feel like it was pretty much there. You have to wait to see what the Chargers ultimately end up coming out with after April 25th and what this roster looks like then. As of right now, you can be pissed off because the Chargers have one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the entire league right now. But you know that they have to go out and get some. And hopefully it starts at number 5.
Danny G says, well, this feels nothing like when I ran into Jim Harbaugh at Disneyland a few months ago. Still trusting him, though.
That was all the feels when that day happened.
That was awesome. Look, Chargers fans, we will get through this. We'll get through this together. I promise. This team will move on. They will come up with solutions. But look, Stephen Rutledge says it. Like, we have to let Ortiz do his magic, work his magic, trust the process. They're going to talk about it. They're going to discuss why. They're going to discuss what the plan is. We're going to see it. You've only got 40-something days until we know. Jake, what are kind of your last, parting words? What's your kind of message to fans, or what are your ending thoughts here? Like, I don't even...
I'll say this in 2 parts, kind of just what you were talking about with Ortiz. Remember, they did not have to do this move. And I'm sure ultimately before they ended up making this decision, that they would have known, obviously, what the roster was going to look like. And I'm sure they had a plan to say, okay, so if Keenan Allen is not going to be on this team and we know that we're going to lose Mike Williams, how are we going to supplant that? How are we going to fill those holes? I have to have a feeling that when we're talking about guys that are actually very familiar with one another between Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, Joe Ortiz, and other members of that front office, that they had some type of plan in place. Now, whatever that means, free agency, the draft, I don't know. But they have to have some idea of what they're going to do to tackle this. Now, that aside, the reason why we were all here. This day sucks. This day is not going to take 24 hours to get over. this day is going to linger throughout the entirety of the 2024 season from the standpoint that we will not be seeing 13 playing on the field with Justin Herbert with this team where he belongs. And it will just suck. It really will. I know we'll all eventually get over it, but it's not today. It's not tomorrow. It's not going to be within the next week. So this just shows you how much Keenan Allen meant to this team, how much he meant to this franchise, how much he was beloved by his players when you see the support that they brought out and came out with on Twitter. So there's no shortage of feelings today, tomorrow, next week, whenever it is, as it relates to Keenan Allen. It's a sad day for Chargers fans everywhere. And we wish him the best.
Yeah, that's honestly the hardest part about this is, first off, perfect saying, honestly. Well done, sir. That's a hard part for me. And I think for most Chargers fans is everybody loved Keenan Allen. Like there's maybe 0.5% that wasn't fully in keep Keenan as a Chargers for life. And the guy was just nails, man. He was automatic. He is so good. He was the safety valve for every quarterback he played for. And he was such a fun story, man, to see what he did from Cal, to watch like the legacy he left and the guys that he helped mentor and the craft that he kept building and how he was with the fans and what he meant to Justin Herbert and to Phillip Rivers and, just like all of that. There's such a connection there. And he was just like Mr. Charger. If it wasn't Phillip Rivers, I think he's the next one, at least, after Yates and LT. I think it was him. And that's why this is a hard day. And that's why we're live now at 11 o'clock p.m. So we'll get through this. It's going to take time. It just sucks. James Wagner says, thank you guys. It's 2 a.m. here, and I just woke up to the news with my phone pinging me that you were on. Sincerely, thank you guys for being a place for the Bolt family. We're just trying to do our part, and we're processing and going through it with the best of you. Jake looks like he's about to pass out because that brown stuff's kicking in, as it should.
No.
You still got time. You still got time.
I still got time. We're good.
Yes. Look, at the end of the day, barbecue chicken, says Ike Boy 23. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. There's like barbecue chicken. He had the whole Yasirski thing. Like, there's so much that he did, man. And it's just, yeah. Hats off to you. Go ball out in Chicago, man. Like, you're going to be the best receiver they've had there in years. And we'll be watching from afar and rooting you on regardless. Jake, anything else before we try to fall asleep tonight?
All good. I appreciate everybody coming in here, sharing their feelings and their thoughts about this day. It was tough, but appreciate you all for staying up no matter what time zone you were located in. Really appreciate the support, you guys.
For Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake T. Hefner, myself at Dan W. Sports on X. Again, please hit the like and subscribe. Help us out a ton. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you find your fun podcast for the day. Until next time, Jake, everybody, enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'm sure we'll hear from the staff soon. But until then, take it easy and have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.